political brands as the parties vied with one another to woo middle-class voters. James Earls-Jones is coming back. He laughs at the jokes without ever telling us exactly what they meant by middle class. But if you thought that was sickening, it was nothing compared to the clash of confectionery when this American food giant Kraft took on our own very dear, beloved little Cadbury. Now, if you can't keep the Americans off our crunchies, what hope is there for dear old Blighty? Well, at least we've still got the Royal Mail and British Airways. But who would want them? Anyway, to remind us of the good old days when British meant best, we sent the Mirror's Kevin Maguire on board Concorde to round up the political week.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this British Airways Concorde flight to New York.
Champagne, sir, with a wisp of gold? Thank you. Chocolate supersonic heaven. Nah, I wish. This plane's about as grounded as Jeff Buffoon and Patricia Blewett. But hey, at least it's British-ish, and there's not a lot of that about, is there? Captain Brown's back in control of the flight deck on the new Labour plane. And this time it's classless, just like Concorde. There's no economy, no first class, just a squeezed middle class with limited legroom. And if you've had financial thrombosis, Gordon's had it too.
I'm from the middle class. I was part of a middle class family. And I feel of it this way. We never went without the basics, but we never were so well off that we weren't worried about the future.
Oops, it's gone. Class war's been ejected. But has anybody told that Labour social flight engineer Hattie Harperson, or that Biggles of the Tory party, David Cameron, who bragged he'd be brazenly elitist when hiring teachers? I'd whisper the E word softly, my Bullingdon Club chum.
We are committed to a comprehensive programme of reform to elevate the status of teaching in our country. We want to make it the noble profession, the career path that attracts the best brains, that's well rewarded and that commands the most respect.
I nearly choked on me cheese string when I heard banker Jonathan Powell, Blair's one-time first officer, describe himself as a socialist at the Chilcot inquiry. Pass me the sick bag. At least Powell admitted that the Iraq war wasn't based on sound intelligence, but an assumption Saddam had WMD.
We had an assumption, and we had that assumption because Saddam had used weapons of mass destruction. We had that assumption because he'd lied about getting rid of it. We had that assumption because he'd got rid of the weapons inspectors, and we bombed him in '98. So it would have taken some quite strong intelligence saying he'd got rid of them to convince us that he had indeed got rid of them.
That great cabinet survivor, Jack Straw, distanced himself from Blair without completely disowning the Iraq War.
Were you entirely comfortable with the way that the Prime Minister was expressing himself to the President?
Well, if I mean,
my question was whether you were happy with what the Prime Minister was putting on those bits of paper.
Yeah, being happy with it. Mainly, would I have written the memorandum in the same way? Probably not, because I'm a different person.
Ladies and gentlemen, please brace yourself for some slight turbulence.
Next Friday will be no picnic for Tony Blair. The chocolate finger of blame will be pointed when he's asked why he claims Saddam's WMD programme was active, detailed and growing. And to Prime Minister's questions, David Cameron avoided the economy and instead demanded the release of a full report into Doncaster Social Services.
The fact is, this is an appalling case of 2 children being dragged onto a wasteland and tortured within an inch of their lives. It shocked the whole country. He talks about the publication of this report. Let him just listen instead of consulting. Listen to this important point. The BBC, who've seen the report, they say the summary and the full report don't match up. Aren't we in danger? Aren't we in danger of having a cover-up if we don't publish it in full?
David Cameron thought he had his family policy locked down, but but it seems Ken Clarke was still in duty-free.
Now that this shadow business secretary is with her, let me just tell the House what he's said about this married couples allowance. My view of Conservatives is that it's not for us to tell you what to do through the tax system. My wife didn't put up with me because I was getting 150 by way of tax allowance. He said, this is social engineering, for God's sake. And when I joined the party, we weren't in favour of it. A verdict on the Leader of the Opposition from the shadow business secretary.
If life is like a box of chocolates, it's been invaded by a Dairy Lee dunker. It took Nick, Cream Egg Clegg, to stand up for the Great British Buttons.
So why is it that the Royal Bank of Scotland, which is owned by this government, should now want to lend vast amounts of our money to Kraft to fund that takeover?
Mr. Speaker, if he's really suggesting that the government can step in and avoid any takeover that's taking place in this country and just do it overnight, and then tell a bank that it's got to deprive a particular company of money by government dictate, then his liberal principles seem to have gone to the wall.
The twirl of Westminster, Lord Mandelson, had talked a good game, but when it came to the crunch, he admitted defeat against the cheesy might of Kraft.
Of course I understand that emotions are going to be riding high, but equally I've always made clear that ultimately the decision would be one for the shareholders of Cadbury.
The pre-election campaign cruises on, so buckle your belts for a truly classless campaign.